know y'all seen all the fuckery going on.
A lot of bullshit up in the NBA. Yeah.
Man, let's get right into the shits. So the Nets just became an all-time, supposedly on paper, great team.
Yeah. First, what the fuck is happening with the parity in the NBA? I want to ask you, if you're like, if you're a hooper, you're a former All-Star, you're stuck in some bum situation, would you, Mike Magnet Groovy the Move Ramirez, go join a powerhouse that already has 3 top 10 players in the league on it to get a ring? Unless you're like completely over the hill, like, you know, you're just a bench player.
No, yeah, like you're former, like you're at your hind legs, well, basically.
Yeah, like would you, like Jared Dudley chasing a ring or like Channing Frye chasing a ring is different than Blake Griffin chasing a ring.
No, definitely, obviously different. We're talking about, and no disrespect to them, because I mean you have to be somewhat good to be in the league.
100%.
As long as careers they have had, but they weren't an all-star at any point in their career or considered to be the next greatest power forward of all time.
Right.
That was considered Blake Griffin at a point. People thought he was going to be Karl Malone 2.0.
And he's a perennial all-star.
Oh yeah. Oh, and
how many did he even go to? Like 7, 10?
7? Yeah, something like that. Former number 1 overall pick. I mean, rookie of the year.
What did you send me? You sent me a thing that when the I think the LaMarcus Aldridge thing went down. You sent me, or maybe it was a Blake Griffin one, but you sent me all their accolades on paper. It's like, what the fuck do we need all those accolades for on one team?
No,
and then their coaching staff too.
So I was saying that they have 5 all-stars, I think now. Well, and if you want to, I think DeAndre Jordan didn't make 1 all-star, so they have 6 all-stars.
Yeah.
Whether or not you consider DeAndre Jordan an all-star or not, he still made an all-star team. So it's 6 all-stars on one team. And I'm not saying they're in the prime of their career, all of them, but they're still got some good years left in them. I don't think LaMarcus Aldridge is, and I don't think he's on his hind legs yet. Blake Griffin, I guess you could make a case that he is, but I think given the opportunity, I think he just wanted to get the hell out of Detroit.
100%.
But no, like they have 6 all-stars, 2 former MVPs, 2 champions, fucking a coaching staff that on, like, if you count out their accolades, their assistant coach is a 2-time coach of the year. Their head coach is a 2-time MVP. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so this team, if they this year, it's going to be really like, that's just going to cause a narrative for something if they don't win, but they should win the next 4 or 5 championships with this roster and this coaching staff.
Right. And it's all to beat a 36-year-old LeBron. That's what I keep hearing. No,
literally. And that narrative, in our opinion, I think has to change too, because I was talking about it off camera or off recording that literally the only time I would say LeBron carried a team was literally 07. And okay, you can make the case, well, the Heat weren't doing nothing until LeBron got there. Well, you also make that case with Chris Bosh and, you know, the other surrounding pieces that were there. I still think that Heat team, I'm not saying they would have won it all, but I think they would have maybe got one without LeBron, as far as like the dynamic and the pieces they had together that came together. That was still a nice group of, you know, team. There was still a team put together. LeBron obviously, you know, takes you to another level, but I still think that they would have competed. Win a championship, maybe 1, who knows? I mean, hell, that group got 2 out. They were supposed to get 8.
Right. They self-proclaimed, said they were going to get not 1, not 2. No,
exactly.
we were joking right before we started recording about how everyone wants to act like all these super teams are literally to beat LeBron. You know, if anything, he had, like, and I brought this up off air, you know, he went and had to get Anthony Davis. He sent that whole young core, minus Kyle Kuzma, your boy, to get Anthony Davis, who is arguably the best center or big man in the NBA, albeit he's injury prone. And then he still wanted Kawhi,
Yeah,
like off of like his season in Toronto, and
exactly.
Paul George. Like, what else do you need, LeBron? Like, come on now.
Right? And let's not forget, as much as LeBron says he doesn't have influence on what these trades are or these picks are that they get, he does. We literally saw him influence Cleveland to get rid of Andrew Wiggins so he could get there.
Oh, 100. And he dictates the coaching staff. As much as people want to act like he doesn't have a say, like he didn't like David Blatt or whatever his name was back in the day, and he's gone. He's ousted. Like, exactly. And for good reason. I mean, if LeBron is your best player and he's your franchise guy, you see it in football, like some of these big name, like MVP quarterbacks, like Deshaun Watson, or Aaron Rodgers. Like sometimes they don't, like the owners don't give a fuck who their quarterback is. They're going to make their team. But in the NBA, there's so much more player empowerment. And LeBron does have a say in a lot of transactional things from the coach, from the players, and they would be stupid not to include him in those. You know what I mean? You want to keep him happy. Sure. But at the same time, if you're going to have that kind of pull and then you lose, you deserve the blame. And when you create, and I'm talking to you, LeBron, when you create a roster and surround yourself with a bunch of role players, I saw Richard Jefferson and Kendrick Perkins going at this on one of those programs. Perk was saying, have you seen LeBron? Have you seen the Lakers without LeBron and AD? They're atrocious. And then Richard Jefferson was saying, well, yeah, if you take off two of the best players in the world, and then you're going to be left with that. He's like, they're not playing well, but they will play better when LeBron and AD are back. But the thing is, that's true also because they're designed to fit their style of play. So obviously, if you take the key cog machine off of the train may still move, but like you need that engine to go. And so for me, LeBron deserves even more blame when things go wrong, because it's not like LeBron plucked himself and said, all right, I'm on the Spurs and I'm going to run your system and do your, no, LeBron completely just crumbles whatever organization he goes to and builds it back up his way. And so,
for sure.
Now you have all these super teams. They're trying to go after LeBron, who I don't even think he's the best player on his own team. I mean, hot take, but I think it's Anthony Davis.
But this goes back to my last take from the last pod, or one of the other pods, that I was saying that this goes to show that LeBron is painting the narrative to set up his MVP debate, that he should win this year because look how bad the Lakers are doing without him there, and look what happens when he's there. Like that goes to show you that, in my opinion, I do think that every time something happens, at least lately in the past, let's say 5 seasons, something's happened to LeBron where his teams go on a streak and they're like topping whatever coast he's in at the time. And then they'll go down because he takes some time off, which is fine. You can say it's an injury or whatever. I think he's just taking time off to get ready for the playoffs, which is fine. I mean, call it an injury, call it high ankle sprain. We've all seen LeBron flop. So it's not unnatural for him to take this time off and say it was a high ankle sprain. I'm not saying he's not hurt. I'm just saying it's not unnatural for him to not do something like this. And I do believe he's trying to set up his MVP debate that he should win this year. But yeah,
that actually brings up a good point that I just thought of. What are your thoughts on MVP voting? Do you think it should go to more so arguably like the best player on the best team, or do you think it should be any player? For example, if you have a really good player on a trash team, are his teammates just garbage? Or do you think like, for example, what you're laying out like that, it gives a narrative for him to win it, but do you think that shouldn't be the case? And like, do you think like anyone should be able to win it regardless of record? Or how do you view like MVP voting or how it should be?
So before I jump into my take, I don't know if you've seen like Charles Barkley and Shaq going back and forth about I want to say, I forgot if it was James Harden, or I forgot who they were talking about, but they were going back and forth saying about MVP and how it's more like it does matter about your team and not just who the better player is. Like it matters who the best player on the best team is because you're able to lead them to here. And Shaq was saying, no, it should be the best player in the league. But then Charles Barkley, kind of got him in a point like, well, you were the best player in the league and you only got one. So what does that say about you? You know what I'm saying? He was just saying like, it does matter. And your teams were number one all the time and you only won one. So,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Like, so like the points to me were just kind of like, but I do believe that if you are the best player on the team that was not in position as they are today, or like as they are last year, I think that should be the person who made a big difference to put your team in a position to make the playoffs should be the MVP. Like, in my opinion, I don't see how Chris Paul's not mentioned more in the MVP talk. And
I know where this is going.
But I'm saying Chris Paul literally took the Suns from trash class. Like they're top in the West, which is the West is, if we consider the West to be the toughest conference out of both, he's taking them there. Devin Booker was out, a few games. I don't know. I don't think it was a crazy amount, but he was out, and the Lakers were still on the Lakers. The Suns were able to beat the Lakers when he got ejected. Like, so that says something to me, and I think Chris Paul needs to be mentioned. I think honestly, Chris Paul should probably win MVP this year. The shit he's done to this year with the Suns, I think that overlaps any other team. Like,
that's a hot take.
Like for the Nets, like that's a stacked team. I think now James Harden's still there, so he makes up for like the Kevin Durant and him not being there. Let's say Kevin Durant's there. Kevin Durant was in the MVP talk until I still believe he's just taking time to get ready for the playoffs. I don't think he's as hurt as we think he is. I just think he's taking time off, and that's just is what it is. But then they're also saying Kyrie at a point was in the MVP talk. I don't think that's a thing, but it is what it is. But like to go back to my take, I do think that the team that was in a lesser position the year before and they acquire a new player, and that, or even if it was a player from that same team that helped them elevate to where they are now, I think that should be more of a credential for you to win MVP than just who's the best team and who's the better player. Like, I don't think Giannis probably should have won last year, but it is what it is with that. Maybe his first one, but the second one, you go back and forth if it was LeBron, Giannis, or even James Harden.
Well, and that's been a debate. Is it like best player? Is it best player on the best team? Or is it the most valuable player, which isn't necessarily equated to the best player comparatively to the rest of the league? Like you said, Chris Paul is more valuable to the Suns than Kyrie is to the Nets. Like, you know what I mean? In a sense. So like, and with the Kyrie, I think he's MVP caliber talent, but I don't ever see him having the situation to win an MVP now. I mean, he's on a bunch of super teams, and like if he would have done something on the Celtics or maybe, but I don't think you should win MVP when you have a squad that's like, for example, I don't think an MVP should be on the Utah Jazz. I think that's a collective team that's good, like, and even like with All-Star voting, the same thing, where some people get snubbed for being, well, I just think, you know what, actually, regardless, I think it's a flawed system, All-Star voting and MVP voting, because again, like Russell Westbrook goes for triple doubles, or Giannis has, let's say, one of the best teams in the East, and he has his, prowess, and then you have James Harden scoring all his points in Houston. Like, is the narrative around stats? Is it around situation? Like, there is a narrative. We talked about Luke on one of the previous podcasts, early in the test run, and he had the narrative building like he could be that dude. This could be
like he's just MVP all of like this year. Like, no,
and it's
go ahead.
No, it's ludicrous but when you have someone that truly impacts the squad like Chris Paul, I think it's a hot take. I agree. I do think he's that engine in Phoenix. I'm not going to say Devin Booker, but I do think Chris Paul deserves a little bit more love in the MVP rate, voting race. And I think it's interesting. I like how you're not straight up saying these dudes are kind of resting, or faking injuries. But Kawhi caught flack for his load management. But
Yeah.
we all know the regular season doesn't matter in a sense. Like
Especially for
we,
yeah,
we know who's going to be championship contenders and who's not. Who like there is a seeding situation. The West is more competitive top to bottom, but ultimately you have to be ready for the playoffs. So like, why would Anthony Davis ever even come back? Lakers are going to be in the playoffs potentially, unless they are fighting for the 8th seed. But so as an organizational standpoint, they should hold these guys out. Or these players are holding themselves out. I mean, we'll never know. Like, we're not in the building.
And this just came to mind right now. I think a lot of people saw what happened with Kobe as far as like his Achilles. And he put a lot on the line his last good season, which was I think 12 or 13, whenever that Dwight Howard team was with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
And the strain Kobe had to put in his body just for them to even touch the 8th seed to make the playoffs. I think a lot of the players saw that and they were like, I don't want to go through that and have to put my whole body into a whole season just to come back. If I get us in a position, because if LeBron, how he has the Lakers now in a position where they're top in the West, if they come down a few spots, at least he's in a position to where he knows he can make some noise, at least in the playoffs when he gets there. And he doesn't have to force it every game. So I could see it from that point of view. Do I agree with it? No, because the reason Kobe played all those games is the same reason Michael did. And I think the same reason James Harden does is because they understand that not many people could see them live. And when they do, they want to put on a show for the fan. And I think that's always why I think that, people just love them for that.
Did you throw James Harden in that group?
Well, no. Well, the reason because how he always plays, like he really doesn't take time out. That was like one of the biggest flacks of why he's so not ready in the playoffs. Like that's just what they say. I'm not putting him in those two categories.
Right.
Those two. I'm just saying as far as showing out every night for the fan, like that's been a hit on him. As far as like that's why when it gets deep in the playoffs, he disappears because they say either he's really tired or he's not conditioned well enough, and he's playing almost every game. Within the season, I think the stat was like he maybe missed a handful in the last few seasons. Yeah. So I kind of forgot we were going on this tangent. But yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, point being, I think to bring it back around, I think. Shit, where were we on? I don't even remember. LeBron, he's faking an injury.
Okay, yeah.
But load management is a thing. But does it really, at this point, does it really matter when you have all these buyouts or you have all these? The trade deadline it popped off. You'll have to fill me in on exactly where everybody went. But it doesn't. It's still at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's going to be the Nets. Maybe someone, if the Nets chemistry-wise or still can't play defense, perhaps, I think it's going to be catastrophic if they don't win it this year. And I honestly would kind of like to see that. I would like to see, the Titanic sink because I don't like when just everybody all these good players get on one team and some of these other players are ring chasing and this and that. But like, because I think it's horrible for basketball. Like, do the Indiana Pacers have any chance to win a championship in the next 10 years? No. And no one's going to go to Indiana to play basketball. Like so I just think the NBA is extra. I think David Stern is looking down and saying, this is atrocious. Like there's just no parity. And so it'll be interesting. We texted each other and I said, if one of these super teams doesn't win, like let's say the Blazers win in this current climate in the NBA or the Nuggets, like a good team that's built around maybe a star or, a good collective group or the Suns, I think it's even more impressive if they beat these teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nets, And or like if Giannis, for example, if the Bucks somehow just go on a magical run, I think that would be really awesome to see. But we have multiple Goliaths now, and I think it's horrible for the game of basketball. I think it's horrible for the NBA.
Oh, it's trash. And now I see maybe like back then when like the whole Chris Paul to the Lakers thing didn't happen, when they had Kobe, Gasol, Dwight Howard, you know. I think me as a Kobe fan, I did want to see him get another one. So I thought that maybe that could have helped. But now looking at it from a different perspective, from seeing other teams do it, yeah, I can see why David Stern didn't want that shit to happen, because he didn't want there to be this kind of situation that's happening now.
Right.
Or just players just join on one team and it's not really fun.
It's not even organic. It's not like Danny Ainge pulling the trigger on a couple different trades or something.
Oh yeah, no, this is just me wanting to go jump on this team because I really, we get along so well, we could win. But that's multiple all-stars on one team. And
right.
I can see why David Stern did what he did back then, and I just don't get it now.
It feels like being at the gym hooping. For all our listeners out there, you hoop or have hooped before, hopefully. It's like playing ball at the gym, and all your goon buddies who are really good get on one team, and then you're left with some scrubs on the other team, and you guys are running, and maybe there's competition, but you have no chance of beating them. They smack that ass 15-9, and then one of their dudes leaves and says, "All right, y'all, I gotta go feed the baby," or the missus is calling, and then they have a spot open, and then there's a squad on next, and then they pick you up, and you're the best player on your team, and you're friends with all those dudes who are nice. Now that next team has no chance. No one has a chance, right? And that's just at the gym. Politics, that happens. That happens at Greenfield LA Fitness. That's what, if anything, that happens. But in the NBA, when it's $1 billion situation, like, and everyone's getting paid, like, there needs to be competition, because especially with the regular season, not even like, it looks like a pickup game. Like we've talked about, I would rather pay to watch them just play pickup, call their own fouls, because it doesn't even feel competitive at all. You got dudes just softly kind of stepping into jumpers. Everyone's, giggling, and it's just a different game. And I'm pushing 30 now, and all I can think of is reminiscing to the early 2000s, late 90s. Like, I miss that brand. Today's basketball just doesn't excite me at all. I don't want to see people jacking up threes. The shit's boring.
Yeah. And to go back to this MVP talk real quick.
Yeah.
I think I forgot to mention, there's no way Kyrie Irving should ever be mentioned in an MVP talk. Like, we see him try to lead a team that was really bad with the Celtics. We saw that. Didn't work out. We even saw last year when he had no Kevin Durant. That didn't work out. He got hurt. He was still the same person that was in, Boston. Mm-hmm. So that goes to show you, I think he needs those kind of players, like superstars around him, to make him look great. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying to make him look like to have him even in the MVP conversation. But I digress on that.
Well, actually, let's if I can chime in here on Kyrie, because I don't know if it was you who sent me a post, but I saw something about Kyrie and Allen Iverson.
That was me, yeah.
And it was, Kyrie doesn't make his teammates better. No. Allen Iverson led a team to the finals.
Yeah, by himself.
Right. Like, he had a bunch of role players: Aaron McKee, Eric Snow, Tyrone Hill, Matt Geiger, whoever was on his team. Mutombo
was on that team, yeah.
So, he had a collective unit, and he was the guy. I was looking at Allen Iverson numbers the other night. I was curious to see how many shot attempts he got per game. And this motherfucker's jacking 25 plus a game, but that's his role. He's a gunner. You need Allen to go for 30 or 40 a night with that that unit. And he also plays D. He's a dog. You know what I mean? There's no denying his greatness. But Kyrie, I think talent-wise, he's unbelievable in the sense of talent-wise. Like, he has a lot of skill and talent for the game. But there's more. You have to do more than just be good at basketball, like putting the ball in the bucket or being able to make a shifty move or score just one-on-one. There's more to the game than that. And we've seen rumors of how he treats his teammates. Sometimes he just goes into a hole and like doesn't talk to anybody. Like,
Yeah.
you're making like gazillions of dollars playing a game. And I know there's more basketball and everything else, but at the end of the day, like, he's kind of an odd dude. He doesn't have, I don't want to say he's immature, but like some of the way he's handled situations is very immature. And I think when he's your third like best player, that means you have a hell of a roster or a hell of a big three. But at the same time, if he's your best player, we've seen players like Allen Iverson, or I'm sure there's others who have elevated their teams to contenders, or like when Kobe, like you see like players who can make their team better. Exactly. And Kyrie just he can do a lot himself. He's got the ball on a string, but at the end of the day, like he just doesn't have that leadership, that maturity, whatever it is. And so I think on the Nets, this is a perfect situation for him because he has no blame, no pressure. It's on KD and James. Like, they're better players than him. And now Blake and LaMarcus and DeAndre. Like, all these, can I get a spot? Like Joe Harris, or like I can spot up in the corner and just shoot threes. Right? I watch their games, and Joe Harris, if I'm even pronouncing your name correctly, it's a very simple white name. You don't even got to play D, dog. You're guarding Platoon, who's just standing in the corner too. No defense, and you just wait for the ball. James Harden has the ball, just dribble. KD, they can all create their own shot. They drive, and then Joe Harris just gets to shoot. Like, what a dream to make $20 million just sitting in the corner doing nothing. And it's crazy.
And if they give JJ Redick, there's no excuse not to win, because how he got bought out by the Pelicans. So now he's a free agent.
Oh, is he a free agent?
Wanted to go to Brooklyn.
He's not in Brooklyn, though, right?
No, but that might be a case. I mean, I hope it's not, but it probably will be. And that they have no excuse to not win. But I do want to touch on this Allen Iverson Kyrie thing real quick.
Oh, JJ Redick's on the Mavericks. Just looked it up.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay. Because like I said, they told me they bought him out, but I wasn't sure where he got picked up.
But yeah, imagine that though, if he was on the Nets. Like, what? Come on.
It would have been stupid at that point. But
anyway,
Stephen A. Like what I sent you was from Stephen A. And he was saying that don't quote me for verbatim, but like he was saying that Allen Iverson or Kyrie Irving was a better scorer, better shooter, better handler than Allen Iverson. But when it's crunch time, he wants Allen Iverson. My opinion, he's not a better scorer.
Right.
He's not a better, and the handle is debatable. I mean, it depends, it's like who you want to pick at the time. But put this in perspective, without Allen Iverson, there's no Kyrie Irving. I don't care how as much as Kyrie wants to look up to Kobe, I guess you could say he's more Allen than Kobe. But without Allen Iverson, there's no Kyrie Irving. Allen Iverson's obviously the better scorer. He led the league in scoring 4 times.
Right.
And he said Kyrie's the better defender. No, he's not.
I disagree with that.
He led the league in steals, I want to say 4 or 5 times. And whether or not passing lanes or whatnot, that doesn't matter. He still led the league in steals. Kyrie Irving is yet to do that. He's yet to lead the league in scoring. I could give you better shooter. I could give you that. But he's not tougher than Allen. Allen could shoot, but people got to remember back then, it was all about mid-range and getting to the basket. Mm-hmm. And really focus. And I think Allen was also one of the main people too you could look at to Kobe that really emphasized, starting to shoot at the 3-point line off the dribble. It wasn't really, and Ray Allen, it wasn't really, glamorized as it is today. But Allen could do it. Give him enough time, give him a whole, and if Allen really put himself into a position to practice, like, as we all know, Allen was more of a gamer. He didn't really sit there and focus on his, go and get his 1,000 shots up a day. He didn't go lift weights. He didn't do none of that. It's been known that Allen Iverson's, whole getting in shape was just going to play pickup all throughout the summer, all for throughout to get ready for the season was just playing pickup. He didn't go get his shots up. He didn't go work on his game. That came naturally to him.
He was a hooper.
He's a football player.
And a football, he's an athlete. Yeah,
and be a hooper.
Like, he's a dog.
Like that. And I think people, some like this younger generation, get it that Allen Iverson was. He should. A lot of people were getting him ready for football. Like he had a bunch of Division I scholarships for football, but then he got in some legal trouble. And John Thompson was the only man that really took interest in Allen and gave him a second chance at life, as far as like getting out of the streets and becoming the basketball player that he became. So I disagree with Stephen A. completely as far as like his points of saying Allen wasn't anything great as far as like compared to Kyrie. Like I said, the only thing I can give him is shooting maybe. And I think Allen had the better handle. If Allen really sat there and practiced with how Kyrie did with the basketball in a trash bag or in a bag, Allen had all that naturally. So imagine if he worked on his game just a little bit.
Well, and yeah, I mean, it clearly shows that Allen Iverson is more a naturally talented player. And I think, and also too, we're not saying Kyrie's not a good shooter or not a good scorer. He's just not as good as Allen. But while you were, go ahead.
His career average is 26 a game.
Right, and he's
like 12 seasons.
And the thing, like when you were saying about like when you mention guys like Stephen A. Or Gilbert Arenas, for example, and you were talking about the comparison of eras. I was listening to Gilbert Arenas talk, and this made me think of he was talking to his co-host or whatever on his pod about players. How I think the segment was the little clip was Dennis Rodman isn't stopping LeBron. And he started. Have you seen that at all? Have you seen him talk about it?
I've seen him talk about it multiple times. Besides this podcast, I know what you're talking about because I've seen the podcast, but I didn't watch it. But he's talked about this multiple times that Dennis Rodman couldn't guard LeBron.
Yeah, and see, for me, so one thing I took away from Gilbert is obviously he was an elite player when he played the game. He's played at the highest level. He's knowledgeable. He has experience. So I mean, when he talks, I guess technically you should listen. But I also feel like he's a little bit more of a personality now. And what he says is off the cuff. It's loud. It's confrontational. But one thing I noticed, he speaks somewhat in absolutes. So he almost is so convinced that like old players couldn't play in today's game, and today's players could play in the old days, and it wasn't like street ball punches and all that. And when he talks about like Dennis Rodman, he broke down like he couldn't guard LeBron because LeBron's a point guard and LeBron's coming downhill and you couldn't even hand check or whatever when he has the ball in his hands. And then he was saying how like, well, when people bring that up, like, well, what rules are they playing in? Because you couldn't guard dudes in this era who now can have step backs and all this stuff. And it just boggled my mind to how absolute he was convinced that what he was saying, that Dennis Rodman, like, for example, with that specific example, that he couldn't guard LeBron. And I think if you take players from like the 90s or 80s, like if you put Isaiah Thomas on the Pistons, not the left-handed Isaiah today, and you put him in this era, the dude's going bananas. Like there's talented players from every era, but the three-pointer wasn't a necessity. Like it wasn't a necessity back in the day. Like, I mean, if, for example, if like Nicholas Batum or Robert Covington or Blake Griffin can hit threes, like we've talked about on this pod, if those dudes can turn into like lethal three-point shooters. Jared Dudley went to Boston College. Dude was not a three-point shooter in college. He was a get your ass on the block and go to work kind of a guy. He is a pure sharpshooter. That's all he does in the NBA now. And he has ridden the bench and coached up these younger players and carved out a career. So you're telling me Michael Jordan, the hardest worker of all time, couldn't develop into just an absolute three-point killer? You know what I mean? Like, so it boggles my mind when Terry Rozier and dudes are getting like 10 threes a game, and we're talking about stats like it truly is a comparison between eras. And so when you compare a guy like Allen Iverson, Kyrie Irving, Kyrie has easier defenders guarding him. He has crazy talent on his team. And in an era where it's wide open, Allen Iverson, like you said, predicated on the mid-range game and getting past the defender going in the lane. I think Allen Iverson's a better finisher than Kyrie as well.
Oh, for
in
sure.
an
He had
era
to finish
with
against Shaq.
right with real centers down there. So, and also too, one more thing on the ball handle. I think ball handling is very overrated in the sense that I know like it gets oohs and ahs and like, the little shiftiness, the hot sauce, get your pepper in the dish. I think it's completely overrated. Make a move and go past your defender. You don't have to dance with them. I know the NBA is a show, but to sit here and say Kyrie's a better ball handler than player A, like Baron Davis could handle the pill with the best of them. Steve Francis could handle the pill with the best of them. So like, I think ball handling is just an overrated skill. The whole point of ball handling is to get around your defender or to create, situations for your teammates. So I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment and say Steph Curry and Kyrie and, certain players in this era are just better at ball handling, because the whole point is to get past your defender. And I don't think you need to dance one-on-one every single time to have better ball handle than somebody just because you can do moves better. I was hooping with a dude at the gym today, and I was telling people he was putting so much sauce in his dish. I said, that's great. If you're making spaghetti, you want sauce. But if you don't have noodles and a meatball and you only have sauce in your pan, then I don't want that spaghetti. You know what I'm saying? And so that maybe that's the old head in me, but I digress. Your Honor.
Not to mention, Iverson shook Michael.
Right.
And hit the jumper in his mouth. Like, come on. Like, no, he doesn't have the better handle. Just because Kyrie could do certain things as far as like skip the ball and not be called for travel, just because he could like, double back behind his back, that's cool. Allen could probably do the same shit. He was just too focused on also scoring. And I want to say this. Okay, yeah, Allen Iverson may have been a ball stopper at certain points and like, maybe got, a little bit too much, like how you like to say, flash in the pan or pepper in the pan or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you also really look at his game, he wasn't just sitting there trying to shake you. He was just trying to get by you. Like, right. Don't get me wrong. He does get caught, dribbling too much, but I want to say not as much as Kyrie. Like Allen Iverson was trying to actually score. I'm not saying Kyrie wasn't. I think Kyrie was trying to get the ooh and the score. Allen was just trying to score, and if he got you, he got you. Like,
yeah.
Look at it.
Well, and also too, it's different when you like, let's say, bring the ball down the court at point guard, ISO your dude, and get a shot for yourself or just an automatic shot for someone else. Just by default, someone doubles you or something, and then playing within the confines of an offense, Larry Brown's offense, where you have other dudes like handling the pill, creating offense. Like Eric Snow brings the ball up the court, or Aaron McKee brings the ball up the court, or Allen Iverson brings the ball up the court. But you don't just go into an automatic ISO whenever you touch the ball. Allen Iverson's coming off a double screen, or he's getting it on the wing, and his role on that team, which utilized his offensive weaponry, is to score or is to be a threat at all times. And so I feel like for me, and I don't have anything against dudes like that's your role, go get a bucket. But it needs to be in the confines of a good offense. And I think like Kyrie and a lot of dudes of this era, and my feelings on the scoring-minded point guard, I don't think that's a recipe for success, which is why Kyrie playing the 2 in Brooklyn makes sense, because James Harden's going to come down and get those 15 assists. And I heard Blake Griffin talking on a podcast, like, oh man, James Harden, he was averaging like 9 assists on Houston. Now he's averaging like 13 or whatever on Brooklyn. Well, no shit. When you have the ball in your hands every time, you have just killers on the wing. You know what I mean? Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, John Stockton, like those dudes who ran the offense, who initiated and facilitated the offense, to me is more impressive than getting 12 assists. Again, stats, they don't lie, but to me, they don't tell the whole truth. You can get assists by just swinging the ball around the horn to a wide open white dude who his only paycheck is to hit these threes. So he's a good shooter. So I just happen to get it and swing it to him. I get an assist. What did I really do?
Russell Westbrook.
Man, yeah. And then when you just hunt for stats, that shit just doesn't tell the whole story. And I think to me, that's why I hate utilizing just cherry picking stats to kind of debate if someone's better than somebody else.
Like he shouldn't like this. I don't think Westbrook should have ever won an MVP. Like he didn't make the team better. Like the year he won it just because he averaged a triple double, and he wasn't the better player in the league. Like
right.
Kevin Durant left. Like the better player left the team, and you just happened to average a triple double that year, but you were knocked out of the first round of the playoffs. So your team just went down more. You literally had the same team except Kevin Durant. And that goes to show you, in my opinion, that you weren't that valuable to the team. Then that did nothing. Just because you average I'm not saying that's not impressive, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that doesn't mean you're the most valuable player.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was impressive too, but and it just goes, I want to hear the people's thoughts too. Like what is a true MVP? Like I said, is it value to a team, to a franchise? Is it stats? Is it narrative? Is it past accolades? You know what I mean? Because Michael could have won way more. Shaq could have won way more.
No, exactly. Yeah. I do want to get back to your Dennis Rodman take from Gilbert Arenas. So did Gilbert say? Did he even mention that Dennis Rodman had to guard a young Jordan? Like, and by young I mean like a 88, 90s Jordan. Like that Jordan was a beast.
Like a freak.
Yeah. Did he mention that? Like this
he did not.
Like, and did he also mention that he had to guard Karl Malone and Shaq?
So what he was cherry picking was when he guards bigs. I mean, he was like Dennis Rodman 6'8", 210. Well, Dennis Rodman's actually listed, I looked it up, he was 6'8", 228. So whether he was 210 and 86, maybe, but also too, whether you're a 210-pound grown man or a 240-pound grown man, hitting can still be effective, like your strength and everything. Like, so he's acting like one's a peanut and one's like a gargantuan, King Kong. But so he basically cherry picked the idea that he's great at using his strength against guys with their back to the basket. And he tried to say LeBron as a point guard is going downhill with momentum. And so what's he going to do against LeBron 280? And then he was acting like there's zero chance to guard him. LeBron in an era where you can actually physically not like it's now if you touch him when he's driving, it's an automatic foul. Anybody, like blocking fouls are called like ticky-tack reach-ins when we used to hoop. And so he's acting like no one could stay in front of LeBron. Like we see Zion do when he puts that shoulder down. He's acting like LeBron's punking dudes like that. He's punking Rodman like that. And then he wants to also cherry pick that where like, well, what era are we playing in? And then everyone wants to act like, they're in the 80s or 90s, like people, it does get hyperbole where like you're throwing punches and stuff. Like some dude comes down the lane and scores 2 layups. Next time he's getting punched in the face. Like, I don't think it's that extreme, but there was way, way more contact in the early 2000s, 90s, 80s. It's just undeniable. That's a fact. And so to say that LeBron he just could not be stopped by a Dennis Rodman, like the Gilbert was like flabbergasted that's even a debate.
And my point to that would be, he acts also like Dennis Rodman wasn't a workhorse. He stayed in the gym. Dennis Rodman would go out and party and come back and work out. Like,
right.
This guy was drunk and high at the same time, getting all these rebounds, stopping all-time greats. And I don't get why he because if he says that if we like the players got to all this nutrition stuff today, okay, you act like the players then aren't going to utilize that today and probably be even better than they were then also.
I think that's what the white dude, his co-host, was like.
Yeah.
Well, Michael was like he's acting like there was no supreme athletes in like the 90s. Michael would have been the most supreme of today in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like if he was like, you just pluck him, he's still the most athletic and the most gifted player in an era where everyone has the kind of training and everything. So he was trying to act like the players of old they don't have the the means of and the athletic ability of these players. I mean, he's forgetting like what Karl Malone looked like, Sean Kemp, you had Desmond Mason, there was like Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, all these dudes. He's acting like there wasn't freak of natures back in the 80s.
Shaq was a freak of nature. Like Shaq was, I would say, LeBron and like when he was with Orlando before LeBron. Like Shaq, we saw clips where Shaq would get the ball and go full court with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and Shaq was like 300, 290 at that point.
And yeah, it's like, and like he's forgetting dudes like Scottie Pippen existed, Adrian Dantley existed, Clyde Drexler existed.
He forgets like they were such workhorses too. Like that, like they wouldn't adjust to the nutrition and like today's style. Like, I guarantee you, if Michael Jordan really, sat down and like took care of his body as far as what he put in it, we're having a whole different conversation about any of like. There's no LeBron wouldn't even be close if Jordan had any of like this now. Like in my opinion, I still don't think he's that close. But if he would have had the same nutritional, mentality as LeBron does now back then, imagine like it'd be ridiculous. Like if he didn't go party, if he didn't go smoke, cigar before, after, during, like all that games, and then go eat red meat and all this other shit. And if he had like the same kind of, like I said, nutritional ideas like LeBron does, and put $1 million into his body, maybe 2 million, we wouldn't even LeBron would not even be mentioned in Jordan's breath at all if that were the case. Like, and I hate like you can't. It's all hypothetical, obviously, but
right.
Like when Gilbert does do that, he makes it seem like no, there's just no way. No, there's a way. You got to add in all those factors too when you're thinking they would, like Jordan wouldn't do that.
Right. And yeah, it's hypocritical to expect one, class at one era to be able to adapt to the rules or whatever, but another era not to be able to adapt to easier shit. Like, I mean, literally, like, and then they talked about the hand checking, and then the dude was like, well, you could hand check in that era. He's like, well, it wouldn't matter because they never had dudes like, and he did have a point where the point guard typically would come down and set the ball up and like set up the offense. And so he's stationary, so you can hand check him, you can guide it. So now but then he's like, but in today's game, you got dudes who are hitting step back shimmies and just, so up and down that you couldn't even get a hand on them to utilize the hand check, and because then, but I was like, at the same time, you don't just see slippery ass players the whole game just not being able to be guarded. It's when you get a little bit of momentum on somebody and you get a step on someone, they can't touch you. You can't hip check at all. And so granted, in the old days, it was easier to hip check because the style of play allowed you to get a hand on somebody in a sense. But he's acting like if you brought those rules to today, it wouldn't even affect it because dudes can just hit step back crazy threes and whatnot. And then he utilized Allen Iverson as the example. He's like, see, when Allen Iverson came into the league, you saw the hand check didn't matter anymore. But the hand checking rule, if I remember correctly, when did that go away? I think it was early 2000s.
Yeah, it had to been. And
like he's acting like Allen Iverson could not be guarded or touched, and was he made it seem as like talking in absolute. Then when the moment Allen Iverson came into the game, into the NBA, and you couldn't get a hand on him, because he was fat, he was an athlete, he played football, but so it was harder to hand check Allen Iverson. But the way he made it seem was Allen Iverson was averaging 50 a game, and that's like he talks in hyperboles to prove his point. And that's what made me go back to look at his stats. And this dude's literally shooting 27 shots a game. And so, if you shoot 27 shots a game and your sole role on a team is to score, you better be putting up 30. Like straight up. So, Gilbert, I guess he's a talking head at this point, just making millions.
For sure, yeah. And he has a podcast and all that other shit. So, one trade I do want to talk about that, I was trying to get into fruition, but never happened. And it wasn't even a trade with the player that they did get. So your Clippers did not get Kyle Lowry like I would have hoped. I think they got someone better. They got a 2-time champion, Rajon Rondo. And And the reason I thought Kyle Lowry would have worked perfectly because he played with Kawhi already. I think he would have fit in perfectly with those guys. And Rondo never came to my mind because I didn't think he'd be on the trading block at all, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he got traded, I do think this might put a little damper in the Lakers. I know you still think the Lakers might, have somewhat more of a chance than the Clippers do.
I think the Clippers.
You do? You still think the Clippers?
I do. Just in the
I know
sense
you said
that,
like their finishing games was like,
yeah, they need to get that figured out. But
yeah,
and I think Rondo will help with that. But continue.
Oh, for sure. I think he will too. That's why I think that's more. They're more of a contender in my opinion. Because you have two great wing defenders, and then you have a point guard that plays D and knows how to actually let the star players play, and he just wants to get assists, really.
Right.
That's what Rondo really just wants to do. And he became a better 3-point shooter than he was in the past. So I think that helps out a lot.
Wait, no. Are you saying a person who predominantly didn't shoot threes couldn't shoot threes learned how to shoot threes in this era? Oh my goodness! It's like I didn't think. Holy shit! Anyway, continue.
Right. But me and you were having a conversation about where I rank Rondo now, and then for this to happen, and like if they were to win a third championship, would I rank them then or after? So I said I think as of now, I do believe he's either 15 or 10. And if he were to win a third with this Clippers team and actually be a real detrimental part to it, I think he'd be top 10. And the reason I'd say top 10, because the list I looked at ESPN had, do you want to know who the number 10 was?
Yeah.
Bob Cousy. And I don't give a damn. If we want to take Gilbert Arenas' analogy on everything,
mm-hmm.
There's obviously more better players than Cousy, obviously. And if you want to say his 9 championships, put him above that, fine. The man couldn't dribble with his left hand at all. He couldn't dribble with his left hand at all. I think I'm better than Bob Cousy. Right now,
retired, you're better than Bob Cousy.
And in his prime, I'm better than Bob Cousy. No disrespect. I mean, obviously he's a legend in his own right, but no, Rajon Rondo would definitely be 10. The other point guards, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's Magic. And this isn't any order. Magic, Steph was in there, Chris Paul was in there, Steve Nash, John Stockton.
Kidd.
Did I say Chris Paul?
You did. Jason Kidd.
Jason Kidd was in there, yeah, and then maybe 2 others. But yeah, Bob Cousy was 10, and there's just no way Rajon Rondo shouldn't be 10 if he wins a third with this Clippers team, because not only did he win with 2 historical franchises with the Celtics, and he was a detrimental part in their championship, and with the Lakers, whether or not there was a pandemic, they still won a championship. If we're gonna give it to LeBron, I'm gonna give it to Rondo. He won another title with that team, and another historical franchise. And to take a franchise, and if they do win with the Clippers, to take with a franchise that really has no business to be in LA as far as like under the Lakers' shadow and everything like that, and to win a title for that franchise, I think that should elevate you to be a top 10 point guard. Not to mention his accolades. I mean, he's been an all-star. Two-time champion. There was a point where he was considered to be an MVP candidate early with the Celtics, because he was just playing phenomenal and leading them, to try to become another dynasty within that franchise. So I do believe that, maybe his attitude, he took a little hit when he was bouncing around from team to team, but no, I do think he's probably a top 10 point guard. I think he's close to breaking a few more assist records. So,
yeah, I agree. I think
he should be up there.
I think he won't catch Magic, Nash, Kidd, and Stockton.
or he won't. No, there's no way you're catching those first.
Yeah, and I don't was Isaiah Thomas on that?
I think so. Yeah.
So he's not. Well, you see, that would be my threshold right there, because I don't view Steph. You know how I view Steph. Everybody
Yeah.
who's familiar with me knows how I view. I view him as more of a shooting guard who,
happens
you
at
know,
one point. Yeah.
yeah, got caught up.
I'm in the same boat as you. I think he's more of a shooting guard. I think him and Kyrie are more of twos than they are one. But
yeah, so like to me, Rondo would be right around that. Especially, I mean, you could almost even argue right now, but you kind of can't. But if he wins a championship in LA for the Clippers, I believe he's the only one to ever win one in the Lakers as a Laker and a Celtic. He's like the only one to actually play for both franchises and then win one.
I want to say yeah, but don't quote me on that,
but like how significant that is. And then if the Clippers are such a bottom dweller, if he does win one in LA for the Clippers in a super team era, albeit with Kawhi and Paul George, it just to me his championships are extremely significant.
Yeah.
And like you said,
he could be better than Chris Paul. Chris Paul was
Chris Paul too.
And you could definitely say, okay, yeah, he played with the big three, he played with LeBron, but he was a big part in that. You can say, yeah, if you put Chris Paul in that happens. We don't know because it obviously didn't happen. That's obviously hypothetical. But what we do know is that Rondo was a big part in that big three with the Celtics, and he was a big part in this Lakers championship.
Right, and you can say he's the piece that like got them over the hump. And yeah, you can almost use that with anybody. You put Damian Lillard on the 01 Lakers. No shit, they're gonna win the championship. You know what I mean? So like, but I think Rondo, he's also a triple-double machine. He does more on the court. For his lack of jump shot and his lack of scoring prowess, especially early in his career, in the age of scoring is obviously the name of the game, and you have these scoring point guards who are putting the ball in the cup. I think he's an old-fashioned floor general who impacts the game more than just putting in 22 points a game. And when if he gives you 12 assists and runs the offense and doesn't have stupid turnovers in big moments, like the turnover that he doesn't get because he slows the game down and facilitates an offense and then swing bucket, he gets no stat for that. But that play right there, if he's not in the game and Reggie Jackson's in the game, let's say, like, shit, I haven't shot in 3-4 possessions. Let me go at whoever is guarding me. And then he, waves off Paul George and shoots and misses. That missed field goal attempt is so much worse than obviously Rondo slowing the game down and then, running the offense. So there's stats that can't even be charted by his intelligence, by his floor general, abilities. And now, like you said, he can shoot the ball too. So I think it's like having another coach out there. I think he's going to be perfect for the Clippers. Like you said, he wasn't really on your radar because you didn't think he was going to be available. But he plays defense. He has championship pedigree, and albeit he's played with big threes and and super teams, that's the era that he's been in. I think he could be a key cog in that Clippers team and hopefully take them over the hump. I'd like to see the Clippers win it. I think it'd be a good narrative.
Oh, same. And especially like all the bullshit that's happening with the Nets and the Lakers. I think the Clippers would definitely that'd be a big fuck you to the league to let all this shit happen. I really hope they do win.
Right.
But no, yeah. So I think we had to mention that. And then like, I don't know if you saw who they traded him for was for your boy Lemon Pepper Lou. Which I thought maybe, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that might be a hit. But then I'm like, nah, because he just wasn't himself this year. He wasn't, it seemed like obviously he took a downgrade of like his shots. He went from, I think, 15 the year before to 12, 10 this year, maybe even 9 points a game. And he even said it himself in his Instagram post saying, I thought about retiring after I got traded. Because he was saying, don't quote me again on this. But it's like, after you give yourself to a franchise and you think that things are going to work out, and then all of a sudden they just trade you like that. Well, Lou, you've been in this game a long time. You've been this 3-time sixth man, and you've been traded off teams where you did really well and you just left. They traded you. So you had to know the business at this point. But I did think it might be hit to their bench. But then I thought, no, I think they needed to fix that point guard, situation. I'm more than positive they'd probably rather get rid of Beverly than they would have Lou Will. But no one wants Beverly. There's really in an era where your point guard needs to do more than just play D and have at least a decent 3-point shot. I'm not saying Beverly can't shoot, but I don't think he's as consistent as he probably would need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I'm pretty sure now he's for sure coming off the bench if he wasn't before. And there's just no way to really fit him into this scheme. Granted, you don't need him to score, but you still would like your point guard to have somewhat offensive ability to get a bucket when need be. So I thought maybe Beverly would have been the choice to trade, but I'm pretty sure they don't want Beverly in Atlanta. They probably don't. No one probably really wants Beverly unless, oh, okay, sure, we'll take him.
Right.
I don't think there's a need for him. But
and I think with Lou Will, how many shot attempts is he getting per game? What, 10, let's say, or 12?
Yeah.
So that just is going to spread to someone else. I think it slides Reggie Jackson to that scoring point guard off the bench instead of. So if anything, as much as I've criticized Reggie Jackson on this podcast, I think his role is, at least he wants it to be, he comes in and scores the ball. So yeah. Lou Will and him used to split time on the floor together as the backcourt, and neither of them are defensive juggernauts. And so obviously you take Lou Will out and then you let Reggie Jackson, get 5 more shots a game, which will also, appease him. And then I think at this stage of Lou Will's career, Reggie Jackson's a similar type player. And so I think it's just, you're going to take his jumpers and then spread them throughout the team. I don't think it's going to be a big detriment to them.
And Lou's older. I mean, hell, he came out of high school 2005. I mean, the last draft class to have high school players come out. He's old. Lily is 15th season, 16th. I mean, Reggie Jackson a little bit younger. So, I think that's probably just kind of what it was with that too. And then also, I know he wasn't happy. I think he's also said that he wasn't happy with how his role was portrayed this season. So I think it was just for the best.
Yeah. I do hope they can get over the hump though with Rondo. I think that'd be a good narrative.
Oh, same. I think like I said, it'd be a big fuck you to the league for letting all this other bullshit happen.
Seriously.
But yeah, I think we kind of touched on everything that we wanted to.
Yeah, I got a lot off my chest tonight. Going on rants. Gilbert Arenas, you need to, keep your opinions to yourself a little bit more. Yeah, no, I think we touched on a lot. I think this is a good pod. I hope the viewers enjoyed it. Got some good insights.
I will say this about Gilbert Arenas, that he's quick to say he'll be fine in this era. Everyone else is not. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's just, and maybe we can talk more about Gilbert because he's a big talking head in the podcast game, in the basketball podcast world. And so obviously, if you're a fan of basketball, of Gilbert's prowess and what he's doing now. I just think it's a lot of what he says is just not absolute bullshit, but his bullshit is in absolutes. It's just his way or the highway. And there's just a lot of logical fallacies that, he uses when he talks about things. And I think it's kind of ridiculous. And if he could just hit a free throw against LeBron, maybe we're having a different narrative talk. So,
obviously.
Whatever. Yeah.
But
anyway.
All right, y'all. Well, comment, like, subscribe, all that other good shit. Follow us or don't follow us. I mean, it is what it is.
If you made it this far, we appreciate you.
Oh, for sure. Always. Leave a comment. Tell us how good of a job we're doing.
Or how shitty of a job we're doing. I like that. I like that you throw it that my way now. Shit, I hope you guys tune in on the next one. It's been Test Run.